Hello, and welcome to the Solutions Manual podcast, where we take life's greatest challenges and turn them into simple, practical solutions that you can actually use. I'm Sarah, and I'm fascinated by nutrition, well-being, and human performance.
And I'm Maciek, a physician and medical leader passionate about helping people unlock their potential. What unites us is a deep fascination with how the human brain works and how to train it.
Together, we will show you how you can rewrite your life story by retraining your brain.
Join us as we explore the intersection of science, the brain, leadership, and personal growth. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Solutions Manual podcast. We are joined today by Abby Payne. Abby Payne is a screen time and nervous system coach, registered nurse, and creator of the Digital Detox Program. It's a science-backed, spiritually grounded program that helps overwhelmed professionals rebuild a healthier relationship with their devices. She specializes in showing that screen time struggles aren't a willpower issue, they're a strategy issue. Abby blends neuroscience, habit change, nervous system regulation, and spiritual presence to help people understand why they get pulled into their screens and how to break the cycle with compassion instead of guilt. So thank you, Abby, for being here and joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, your background, and how does one become a digital detox expert?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to share. So my story, like you shared in my bio, is I'm a registered nurse. That was the majority of my story. I wanted to be a nurse since I was a little girl. My aunt was a nurse and always loved being in her energy. And so it's something I set out to do very young. Became a nurse when I was 19, an LPN. So I wasn't an RN at first. It was a 1-year certificate. Worked for a little while, saved up more money, went back and got my RN a little bit later. But I've been in the nursing field for 10 years. Had lots of different experiences, family medicine, ER, med-surg, ICU, PACU. I've bounced around and had some great experiences as a nurse and some really challenging ones, for sure. Something I've noticed and realized as I got older, they don't teach nurses how to take care of themselves. We don't take care of ourselves. Nurses are generally more unhealthy, overweight than the average American, which is saying a lot because the average American isn't very healthy. And nurses, we have more addiction, alcoholism. In most categories, we are more unhealthy. And I was starting to experience some of that as I was getting into my nursing career, just absolutely no stress management skills, no coping skills. We would all work the night shift, get off at 7 a.m. and go to the bar, have a couple drinks, eat fried food, go home, sleep, watch TV, and then repeat, get back to work at 6 p.m. for another night shift. That's just how we all survived. And that crumbles on you eventually. And what happened with me is I was working in med-surg, which for anyone non-medical is just a general adult unit at a hospital. And I wanted a change. I was getting a little bored. I was like, I've got this down. It's been a couple years. So I applied for a cardiac ICU residency program. The hospital I was at before, it was a 20-bed unit, small community hospital. This was a level 1 trauma center in Denver, getting all the flight for life from the mountains, the ski accidents, the heart attacks. And I was suddenly a small fish in a big pond. I didn't realize how much of a shock it would be. But I started in January of 2020. And within a couple months, the pandemic was hitting us. And all of our experienced ICU nurses were leaving to travel nurse. New York, LA, big money, they were leaving. I don't blame them. But I really started to struggle. Suddenly, I was one of the more senior nurses on the unit with no ICU experience. It's a completely different world, surrounded by true new grad nurses fresh out of school. So I was being given patients I wouldn't normally have gotten for a couple of years, post-code patients, definitely COVID patients. And it was a really scary time as well. Like, what is this virus? Am I safe? Am I going to die in there? I have, instead of 1 ICU patient, which would be normal, I have 4, and started to really struggle with my mental health. panic attacks and nightmares and difficulty sleeping. I was on the night shifts that really didn't help anything. And again, I had no coping skills. So what was I doing? I was scrolling. I was scrolling a lot. I was watching a lot of TV. I was drinking more than usual. I was eating awful foods, and that doesn't help. So it started to snowball. And within about 6-7 months of being in the pandemic and being in my ICU job, I was at a breaking point. I started doing some therapy provided by the hospital. They were providing a couple of sessions for nurses. They gave me 4 sessions, and on the 4th one, the therapist was like, hey, I'm going to level with you. You're not doing well. And if you need someone to tell you it's okay to leave, I want to be that person. You don't have to stay, in this job if it's not good for you. And I needed that permission because there was a lot of guilt for us nurses leaving at that time because it was going to make it even harder on the nurses who stayed. And so I did leave, and I found the easiest job I could doing pre-op at an orthopedic clinic, starting IVs and signing consents and shaving knees. And I decompressed, but I was still having symptoms of PTSD. I was still having nightmares. I was still having panic attacks and anxiety, and I was still scrolling. So eventually I decided, I think, and I was also getting in fights on Facebook, let's be honest. During the pandemic, people saying COVID isn't real. I'm a COVID ICU nurse, fighting with my uncle on Instagram and Facebook. I was like, I think I need to get off of this. So I deleted it from my phone and took a break. And in that time, I healed. I went to therapy, I got coaching, and I became a board certified nurse coach, which is a newer nursing specialty. It's about 10, 15 years old. It's attached to my nursing license. It's nurses who go back to school to become health and wellness coaches. So I did that. That was a year-long program and started my business. And everybody around me said, well, you have to be on social media to promote your business. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Otherwise, who will know that I exist? It is the marketplace. So I got back on, and something about my social media now being tied to my livelihood, I was on there all the time. I was posting, commenting, like this desperate energy started to come up, and it became much more of a problem than it was even in the pandemic. I was always on there late into the night, staying up late scrolling. I discovered Reels and TikTok, which I hadn't discovered during the pandemic. So I was really sucked in. Now, what I struggled with is finding balance, because I could delete everything and not be on there, but how would I be visible in my business? And if I was on there, I had no self-control. My willpower was not efficient to keep me balanced. So it felt like I'm in between a rock and a hard place. What do I do here? And I looked up, is there anybody who can help me with this? Is there a screen time specialist? Because I had a therapist, and, it was just kind of try harder. Plug it in at night somewhere else. I'm like, yeah, tried that. Went up, grabbed it, brought it back to bed. That's not helping. And I couldn't find an expert. I found articles, 10 ways to reduce your screen time and things like that. I had tried everything that was already in there, and it wasn't working. So I realized, I kind of had this aha moment where I was like, there is no expert. I have to become that expert. And this is a public health gap and a mental health crisis. And what do nurses do? That's who we are. If you look at nursing historically, nurses are public health champions. So I was like, I'm going to create a solution for myself. And I read all the books that I could. I read Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. I read Anxious Generation, listened to tons of podcasts, and found solutions that worked for me, and then brought it to my community of female business owners that I was in a group with. I ran a couple of live groups, turned it into a full program, and saw incredible results of people who were scrolling till 2 a.m. every single night. That behavior stopped for the first time in years. They had tried everything within a couple of weeks, and it was a really amazing experience. So I decided this is going to be my niche, and it really connects to everything else I'm passionate about, which is presence and community and connection, which I feel like screens in so many ways degrade all of those things within us as human beings. So I was like, this really fits well with everything that I want to do as a nurse, as a healer, as a coach, is helping people not only get off their screens, but learn how to manage their stress holistically and connect with other people. And now that's what I've been doing for a couple of years now.
Wow.
Wow, what a story. Well, Abby, first of all, thank you for choosing nursing. I think this is one of the most demanding professions, I think, that exist, no doubt. And well, you're still nursing, just in a slightly different capacity. But so thank you for doing this. I think that's an amazing thing. And what I find very interesting is it is prevalent throughout medical education. Like if you work in an ICU, they tell you, or in any emergency type of response, the first thing they teach you is to take care of yourself. But nobody tells you how.
Right. Right.
No one throughout. It's just expected that everybody's going to figure it out.
Yeah. And we don't. And so many people don't. Some people
most
do.
People don't.
Yeah.
Most people don't. I think that is the problem.
Yeah.
So that is an inspiring story that you have managed to find a way. And you're right. We live at the time of the world's largest mental health crisis right now. Because again, nobody hands you an instruction manual to your brain.
Right.
And
right.
all the symptoms that you went through, they are symptoms of a busy brain, of not giving your brain enough time to heal. And you've mentioned a lot of things that we'll be coming back to, but the willpower being a myth.
Yes.
About the therapy not being good enough. I think what I'm happy, I would say, is that you didn't go to a physician, because you would probably be prescribed with anxiolytics or antidepressants, and that would mess you up even more, because that would just manage the symptoms without resolving any of the underlying problems that are ongoing in our brains. So that is an inspiring story. So tell us and our listeners, what does digital overload look like, and what are the consequences of spending too much time on our screens?
Thank you for recognizing me as a nurse. It is a wonderful and challenging profession. And so what does digital overload look like? It looks like a lot of what I've already shared in my story, if you're on the more extreme side. But like everything, there is a continuum, right? There's the more mild person who spends a little too much time scrolling and wants to cut back. And then there's the person who's spending 8+ hours a day on some kind of passive screen time, scrolling, shopping, on YouTube, watching videos. So there is a continuum, but I kind of liken it to alcohol in some ways, because you might not realize how much better you would feel if you gave up those 2 beers a night. You know, you might not realize how much better you would feel, how much better you would sleep. You would get sick less. You don't think it's making an impact, but when you decide to do 30 days, no alcohol, your skin clears up. You're like, wow, I feel so much better. I had no idea. And that is what I can see with screen time. There's definitely people who know that they have a problem, who have recognized it, who are trying to find solutions and say, like, I need help. But there's also a lot of people who aren't aware that they have a problem, or aren't aware that it's impacting them as much as it is. They think it's normal to be up till midnight or so scrolling, pulling out their phone first thing in the morning to check the news and their email, getting a hit of adrenaline before they've even stepped out of bed. It's all normal, but it's very detrimental to our brains and our nervous system and our health. There's been some really interesting studies starting to go out on the impact of screens on our brains. They've noticed that particularly in children who have more than 7 hours a day of screen time, which is a lot for children, but it's happening. There are children out there who are getting that, especially teenagers, young teenagers, preteens, that they have cortex thinning. So their actual brain, the gray matter and the white matter, begins to atrophy. And these are essential, connections, especially in a developing brain, to learn empathy. They've noticed and studied that empathy is decreased when people spend a lot of time on screens. The ability to look at someone else and say, they seem sad, that person seems angry, that person seems lonely. Recognizing facial cues and social cues is diminished. And then that superhighway between our lower, lizard brain, that limbic system, and our higher cognitive process, it begins to atrophy as well. So you can't give context to your emotions. You can't say, maybe I'm just, tired. I need to take a second. No, it overwhelms your whole system, and sensory overload. We see that. So it does definitely have an impact on the brain itself. And then also has an impact on our stress management system. We're always running from big, scary emotions, and that creates an avoidance. And then it erodes emotional resilience, makes us not take risks, not see what we're capable of. And then we don't know how to teach our children how to sit with their big feelings because we don't know how to do it for ourselves. We all run to our screens. So I see it as, in every way, it's, I think, one of the most it's a modifiable risk factor for health in so many areas, that we aren't paying as much attention to as I think we should in medicine and in society at large.
Yeah, and you mentioned the self-awareness bit. You were aware that coming back out and pulling your phone back in bed, or even having the phone in bed with you, might be a little bit of that boundary that you just kind of lose. And I wonder, with just observing the people in my life too, that sort of self-awareness maybe is there, but there's a lot of denial on top of it, if at all, if it even exists. So
Yeah.
so where do you start? Do you, because we tried to bring some self-awareness or just awareness to where someone is, but if you're engaging with something that's designed to remove that sort of cognitive ability to be able to identify it and then change it, that's how do you deal with that when the problem is that's so close to, like, it's kind of taking
Insidious.
the ability to do that away, right?
I mean, it's sort of like other addictions. Addiction, I use that term. As of right now, the DSM doesn't categorize screen time addiction as a thing, but I foresee that changing. But if you really look at the science of it, which we might get into, it can definitely be an addiction to be on your phone. But like any addiction, there has to be a readiness. You have to I've worked with people who've hit an element of a rock bottom where they are, choosing not to hang out with their friends because they'd rather finish their, Game of Thrones season. They're choosing not to engage, and they're starting to realize, and particularly they're trying to cut back and it's not working. They've deleted the Instagram app. In a moment of frustration, 2 a.m., I have a meeting at 6 a.m., I got to get up and take the kids. What am I doing? I don't want to be this type of person. I don't want to live this way. They delete Instagram, and then within 5 to 7 days, they re-download it. For whatever reason, maybe a friend sends them a funny video on a text message and they click it and it wants them to download the Instagram app. And they say, oh, I'll download it real quick and watch this video and get off. And then 2 hours goes by and they go on a binge. And this is that shame cycle that we see in addiction, where you are using willpower only approaches, thinking I just need to be strong enough. And then that fails because that doesn't work. And then you have shame that you're weak or lazy or there's something wrong with you when there isn't. It's a strategy issue, not a willpower issue. There is a lot of people out there who are in denial that it is impacting them as much as it is. And for those people, if I'm in conversation with them or they're thinking, like, I don't think it's affecting me that much, I challenge them, like, try to go without, try and delete it for a week. Try and not scroll after 8 p.m. for a week and see how you do. And if no problem, fine, deleted it, fine, then great. Maybe you don't have as much of a dopamine dependence. But for a lot of people, they'll see that they are using it to numb, they're using it to cope, and they're using it to escape. So that can be revealing.
You've mentioned something very profound about this not being captured even as a diagnosis, right? The DSM-5 or ICD-11 does not contain anything related to problematic use. Some doctors classify it as any other type of addiction, but that requires a significant degree of knowledge. There's more. It's encouraged in a way. It's designed to be addictive and harming to people's brains. And if you think about the direct links from use of social media to depression, anxiety, sleep impairment, isolation, inability to postpone gratification, Addiction you've mentioned, right? The unhealthy comparisons, the impact on relationships, misinformation, disinformation, erosion of ability to think critically, right? Those are fundamental skills or challenges that prevent you from living a happy, informed life. And it cannot be recognized as a problem, treated as a problem. There are no protocols for this. I think we've recently, in the last 2 months, seen two governments starting to impose limitations. I think it was Denmark from the age of 15 and Australia from 16, the complete ban on use of social media, which is very welcome. It's necessary.
Yes.
It's a public health issue. But those are isolated things at the moment, unfortunately. And again, it seems like it's just getting worse and worse. So how would parents, for example, recognize symptoms in their children, and how can people recognize symptoms in themselves? Because the things that we just listed, they seem to be prevalent today, right? That there's a whole generation now growing that we call the anxious generation, and we take this as a normal thing, which it doesn't seem to be normal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I gave a presentation yesterday for a therapy group of 24 therapists where I go over actual strategies to reduce screen time and to use with their clients. And I like to equate it to smoking cigarettes sometimes, because I found a picture of a bunch of teenagers smoking cigarettes in the 50s. And that was normal. It was normal, right? It was normal for your doctor to smoke cigarettes. It was normal to smoke on planes. It was normal. And tobacco industry, they knew it was harmful. They knew it was causing cancer for many decades and buried that and denied it until it became an overwhelming evidence that it was so harmful. And I see a lot of similarities with screen time and with social media, where, we think so much of it is normal, right? And seeing a bunch of teenagers on their phones, we think it's normal. But when are we going to realize that it is harmful? And there are these countries starting to put restrictions in place, which I think is, like you said, welcome. But in terms of what someone would see in their child, I think it is, again, revealing when you try and take it away, the degree to which they outburst. I hear that a lot from parents, is like, if I take it away, I can ground them. I can say you can't hang out with your friends. It's like nothing. But if I take their phone away, it's like a full tantrum, screaming, clawing, trying to get it back. And these can be very young children. So that is always revealing if you do try to take it away. I'm not a big fan of a cold turkey approach in my programs. I'm a big fan of a taper, because it is, it can be outside the window of tolerance for people's nervous systems to just have it taken away, especially kids, if they're really using that. But that is a good signal of seeing where your kids are at with your screen time.
What do people fill their time with when they remove that significant of an amount of time on the screen?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the question that people get is, well, now, what do I do? They don't like being bored. We don't like feeling bored. It is a painful state almost to the brain that's so used to being stimulated and active all the time. To be bored is painful. But I also think it's so necessary. So like I mentioned, I'm a fan of a taper. So in my program, week 1 is turning your phone black and white at night. No restrictions. We're not deleting anything yet. We're just reducing some of that color at night. Naturally, your eye switches to black and white in nature at night. So let's recreate that, get you back in sync with your circadian rhythm. Week 2, we introduce a blocking app, which blocks apps at night only, still full use during the day, to taper it down so it's not so shocking. And then in the meantime, what releases natural dopamine? Sunshine, exercise, reading, music, connection, joining a book club, calling up a friend, scheduling time to talk to your friends, text them in advance and say, when can we get a day on the calendar to have a phone call or a FaceTime? We have to be strategic to not only take away the screen time, but also at the same time as that slow taper down of screen time, we're slowly tapering up connection, exercise, healthy foods, better sleep. And I see with that approach, with that taper and rise, people within 2-3 weeks start to feel a lot better and realize how much it was impacting them. They start to feel less anxious. They even start to love their bodies more. There's not as much of that comparison on social media. They just start to see so many of the benefits without having such a nervous system whiplash from a cold turkey that it makes them keep going and continue. It kind of creates its own motivation.
So recently in the UK, I practice in the UK. I've recently read three statistics that an average person in the UK uses their phone. They spend an average person, 5 hours a day on their phone. And it's 6 hours and 1 minute for people under the age of 24.
Yeah.
6 hours a day. And that's among the people who say they have no time to study, to learn, for hobbies, to see a doctor, to go to the gym, to eat well, and so on and so on. No, 6 hours, 7.5 hours is a working day. It means that those people spend almost an entire year of work glued to the screen of their phone.
Yep.
That just let that sink for a moment. Right? It's what, 320 days out of 360 in a year, working days. It's like having additional job.
Yeah.
Or like working a second full-time job, just scrolling through carefully designed sequence of ads, because 92% of social media content is paid content. For every 10 scrolls, only one hasn't been paid for. It is scary, right? It's and we're surprised that we live at the time of the world's largest mental health crisis. So what's the first step that people can take when they realize, or if they start to understand what they're doing with their lives and how the symptoms that they're experiencing are linked to the time they've spent on their devices?
Yeah, it is sobering how much time. And I was spending 8+ hours a day on some kind of screen at the height of my screen addiction. And I had a sense in my bones that this is no way to live. And I think that we are seeing that, even if it's buried, even if people are denying it. I think, the anxiety, the depression, it's your body saying this is no way to live. And it's asking for help, and it's asking for less stimulation. And we just keep giving it more stimulation to try and shut it up. But yeah, our bodies are asking for less stimulation. Where I start people is education, because there is so much shame around how much time people spend on their phone. So the number one step in my program and with my clients is, let's learn about this dopamine. Let's learn about the habit loop. Let's really, demystify this. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not lazy. Your brain is actually doing what it's supposed to do: avoid discomfort and seek pleasure and safety. The social media companies know this. They both trigger you and soothe you with the content that they feed you. They trigger your sympathetic fight or flight, and then they soothe you with some cat videos. And they're creating this sort of trigger independence. They know exactly what they're doing. So we need to outsmart them by building up your education and empowering you to know what's going on in your brain. I also teach a lot about nervous system regulation, fight, flight, freeze response. It's easy for me to think everybody knows about that. Everybody knows that because I'm a nurse. I know about these things, but I've learned people don't know, really. They maybe have heard about fight or flight, but they don't know how it feels in their body. So I teach them polyvagal theory and really tuning in to, like, when am I in that fight or flight state? And when does it get so prolonged or so intense that I hit that ceiling of overwhelm, where I flip from I can to I can't, and I want to freeze and numb out, which is a protective mechanism of the nervous system. It says, this is too much. I don't know how to handle this. We're going to numb out. And that's what I was doing during the pandemic. So much intensity at work in the ICU that I would just numb out and want to disappear. And it was a protective response of my body doing its thing to try and protect me. So really, I educate people on this system, their nervous system, their vagal nerve, how to tone that, train your body to be calm, train your body to have peace. Education is a huge part of it. And in my programs, that's where I started to see some of the best results, not just teaching people how to use a blocking app, not just teaching them the tech stuff, which is important to reduce the willpower element. But when I started bringing in the nervous system education, the mind-body education, people had that light bulb moment. Oh, it's science. There's science to this. And it has nothing to do with me and my personal level of willpower. It is empowering to really learn about your body.
Yes, and this education aspect, I think it's fundamental, and especially that people have a belief, or if they might feel that they're able to put this down or withstand it at any moment. And somehow they believe that they can, by themselves, beat the multi-billion-dollar companies behind the devices and the software that they're using that has been designed and engineered by behavioral experts to keep them glued to their screens. I love how you said about the sequence of what they're being fed. And I encourage everyone to pay very close attention to what they see on social media. Something funny, fluffy cat, and then something outrageous to immediately bring you, either make you agitated or something to bring you down. Something you're sad about, a cause that you know that will make you sad, and then they bring you up a little bit for a moment, and then keep bringing you down. And every 10 or 12, you get an ad. Buy this, solve this, do that, right? And that value of each of those cycles is carefully calculated, and it never ends.
No,
And we
never
have
ends.
no idea what's going on. And we think we have a full control over that. And that is scary.
And the lack of morals and ethics and responsibility on these companies is just very disturbing to me, that there's no accountability, especially with how it's affecting teenagers, young people, body dysmorphia, eating disorders. There is hard evidence at this point. And also sexual exploitation that happens on social media apps, where social media apps know when someone says that they're 18, but they're really younger, because they will feed them content for young 13-year-olds. And they will, even if they receive a nude photo from a stranger, it will be blurred if you're under 18, but not removed and not blocked. So they know these things, but they don't block that content. It's very just capitalistic greed. It's all about that bottom line and increasing shareholder value. And I just really can't stand it. At this point, I've gotten off of social media. I use Substack as my home base because I don't want to devote any of my money, or even if it impacts my business. I just morally, ethically, I can't do it. It just doesn't feel right to support that business.
Yes, and I think also even for people running businesses, there's this obsession with chasing the numbers on social media, like if it ever translated to any profits for anyone apart from the companies behind them. Like, it doesn't really matter for most of us, right? There might be a few lucky individuals, but most of us wasting time and money chasing something that has zero impact on absolutely anything. Yet this pressure to do this is immense.
Yep. And there's this neuroscience here in Salt Lake City that he's one of my friends. He's also into this space of reducing brain rot and helping be a brain coach for people to get off of screens. And he equates it to a cult. He grew up in the Mormon church, so he isn't part of that faith anymore, but he did a lot of research and looking at cults, and he sees social media. It actually ticks a lot of those boxes. You have to have it. You need us. We provide the answers. And if you're not on social media, your business won't do well. There's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of tactics involved in the whole social media complex that, to step away from it completely, people just think it's not an option. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing.
So when you mentioned you gave a session with other therapists, did they know what dopamine is? I mean, I don't want that to sound
I know, right?
But I've heard of so many examples where I have friends who go to various healthcare providers and therapists, and yeah, my therapist says I need to, I have a dopamine problem, almost as if it's like, yeah, I know what it is, but like there's nothing really beyond that. And I'm just wondering, because you are now talking about this with healthcare providers, and maybe this might end up being, on an intake form even in the future. I
Yeah,
mean,
and people do it. People do it for years, right?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you report whether you smoke and how many drinks a week you might consume, but like
Mm.
I
Right.
have not been asked or seen whether how many hours a day do you, maybe that would be a good intake for everybody, but that's a separate thing. So I'm just wondering, Leo, what is the basic level of awareness and education around like the what really dopamine is and what it has,
Hmm.
what you're trying to help them help their patients and their clients manage?
It's a really interesting question. When I first started talking to therapists, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm like, who am I? I mean, yes, I'm a nurse, but like, who am I to come in here and talk about nervous system regulation? And, I'm like, these are the experts here. And in a lot of ways, they know about, the coping skills side of things, the 4-7-8 breathing and techniques on that side. But I did see and do see a gap in terms of what is dopamine really, what is it in the brain, and how to help people reduce their screen time and how to build that awareness that it might be a contributor to what their symptoms are. I mean, if you get off social media within 30 days, you can have almost complete remission of anxiety and depression for a lot of people,
Yeah.
similar to drinking alcohol. If you just take 30 days of abstinence, then you can feel significantly better. But is there that awareness? I would say there's not. There is definitely therapists I've seen who are, they typically tend to be a little bit younger, like under, 35, the younger therapists who they've read Anxious Generation, they're in this, they grew up with a phone in their hand. So I think they experience it for themselves. And they are very passionate to talk to me after the meeting, after the training, and pick my brain even more because they're more informed on it. But yeah, I gave a talk yesterday to that group of 24 therapists, and so many of them I asked, what are you doing when your clients say, I scroll so much or I scroll late at night, and so much of it is willpower only approaches.
Yeah,
And
which is guaranteed to be ineffective, right? If anybody
yeah.
understands anything about the brain, it's not going to work.
And they know this
Yeah.
for alcohol. They know this for other addictions, but there's this gap where they're not applying the same skill set that they have to treat screen time. So they will tell someone to dump all the alcohol out in their house and take it out of the house. Don't just have it in your fridge. Why would you just still have it in your fridge? That's not a strategy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. That's just not a good strategy. But when it comes to screen time, yeah, there seems to be a missing piece there. And it's really rewarding for me to do these trainings and to have all these therapists have that light bulb moment of, oh, I've been going about this all wrong with my clients. And I actually have the skill set. I have the addiction knowledge, education, and I can bring that into this and make environmental modifications, blocking apps, use tech to fight tech. I'm a big fan of that. We have to outsmart it. And that's an easy way to outsmart it, is use a blocking app, a good one. But teaching therapists how to use these blocking apps, they're not all made equal. You have to have one that locks down your settings and prevents cheating, and you can't just bypass it. Like the built-in one on the iPhone is ineffective. So even teaching a client to try and use that is setting them up for failure, because they're going to try and set up those things, but you just bypass it. There's no real block, and then they feel really bad about themselves. Like, wow, I even went so far as to set up the screen time limits on my phone, and I couldn't even stick with that. Like, I'm really far off. And I'm like, no, that doesn't even work. That just doesn't, makes them hopeless, and then they don't want to try anything new.
Yeah, it makes them feel inadequate and like a failure.
Yeah.
Trying to win with multi-billion-dollar tech firms that are putting significant resources specifically into making sure this is difficult.
Yes.
I remember a while ago, it was relatively easy, if somebody had a level of technical knowledge, to block certain servers on the home access point on the router level. But now the number of servers they will need to block is massive, and they keep changing.
Mm.
So they designed it in a way that make it impossible to have one solid and relatively permanent solution that will limit your ability to access that crap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the younger generation on their phones and professionals and people in high pressure jobs. But what about people who are living alone because maybe they are disabled or lonely or their spouse passed away already? I mean, I'm also seeing a lot of concern with use for devices with people who are much, much older.
Yeah.
So, do you work with any people in that age group as well? And how would your strategy change if you're working with people in a retirement community, for example, or people who are new to phones, but it kind of became a pacifier for where they are in
Right.
life?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, I've tried to have a balance where I'm not anti-technology. I mean, for a grandparent who lives in a assisted living or a nursing home to be able to see pictures of their grandkids and see what they're up to and little videos on their kids' Instagram, there is a level of connection that can happen there. There's also awareness. There's been lots of stories of people scrolling Instagram and figuring out that they have a disease, an Ehlers-Danlos or something, where they're like, oh, that describes all my symptoms. And then sure enough, they get tested and they have this. So it's not that social media and technology is inherently evil. I think that how social media companies are running it is evil and how they are manipulating it is evil. But when it comes to older people, I haven't worked with many of them. I have worked with one. She was a fellow nurse that worked with me at my last hospital job. Post-retirement, she was PRN, so she still came in once a week, but I believe she's in her mid-late 60s. And she was spending a lot of time on news apps, or on Facebook, lots of news, and then the fake news, not knowing what was to be trusted and what wasn't. And it was really irritating her, making her very angry all the time. That's why she kind of came to my program. She's like, I'm just angry all the time because of what I see on the news. But like, I have a great family, I have wonderful grandkids, but I'm so angry all the time. And I think it's social media. What was challenging working with her was that she isn't as tech savvy. So when it comes to setting up a blocking app, for people who are, maybe a little bit younger, that they can watch a step-by-step tutorial that I create and set it up on their phone. But she was having a lot of, struggles getting it set up. So her and I met up at our next shift that we worked together. I was like, okay, bring your phone. Obviously, we'll both bring our phones and like, let's get it set up together. And I set that up for her on her phone. That's where that younger generation helping the older generation with technology, I think, includes helping them set up healthy boundaries. She didn't want to have access to Instagram, Facebook, or even the internet after 9 p.m. She was like, I'm staying up till midnight, being enraged at the administration and politics. I don't want to do that. So we set it up that it blocked everything. The nice thing about that, not being tech savvy, is she didn't know how to get in and unblock it. So I'm like, once it's set up, and I told her that, I was like, I can show you how to get in there. And she's like, oh, I don't even know how you're doing this. Just do it because I don't want access to this after 9 p.m. Please just set it up for me. And now, like, she doesn't know how to undo it, which is kind of a gift.
Which is probably life-changing for her as well. I think that one of the questions we love asking people sometimes is was there anything in the last 10 years that you have learned on the news that had a significant, any type of a significant impact on your daily life?
Right.
And
No.
yes, for pretty much everyone, nothing.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of, I think it's Hans Osling. He wrote a book called Factfulness. several years ago, but his whole book is about how the world in a lot of ways is getting better. More people have access to clean drinking water than ever before. More women have rights over their bodies and over their government. Fewer children die of accidents and drowning and poisoning. Like, in so many ways, the world is getting better, safer, cleaner, healthier, but that doesn't drive clickbait. That doesn't keep you scrolling. So, again, social media, news companies, the headlines are all going to be about novelty, far out things that are really strange, or to enrage you, make you fearful, because
Anger
that drives
and fear.
consumption. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
drives consumption. But in so many ways, the world is getting better. So like, that piece of news is what impacted me the most, was to learn that everything you see on the news is hyperinflation of what's not happening. What is happening is there's a lot of good things going on.
Abby, you've also mentioned the guide that you have created. Is this something that we'll be able to link for our listeners so that they can?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Super.
So right now I ran those live groups, my digital detox program. And so many people wanted to do it, and it wouldn't fit with my schedule because I still work as a nurse. And, I decided to turn it into a self-guided, self-paced program. So people can work through it on their own. There's recorded video lessons from me explaining dopamine, explaining your nervous system, building that education, and then step-by-step tutorials on how to set up a blocking app, how to automate a grayscale at 8 p.m. on your phone, using the tech and also the other side. And then, of course, they can use it in conjunction with therapy, which is why I like talking with therapists. Is here's the tool. Here's the self-guided program. Get your clients to do this and then support them, because stuff does come up when people start reducing their screen time. I had one amazing woman who she had lost 200 plus pounds naturally, diet and exercise. She was a weight loss coach at this point and had become kind of a workaholic with that, and was on her phone a lot on social media, posting, and wanted to have more balance. As we started to reduce her screen time, she started eating more again. And she started having struggles with that compulsion again, first time in years. And I referred her to therapy. It's like, things do come up, and you might not realize what you might be numbing or what you're using this as a coping skill, even if it's just overworking, even if it's email and Slack and, not even social media. It's all your work stuff. When you start to peel that away, things can come up. So get support, whether that's a coach or a therapist, or do it with a friend,
That's so interesting. You just brought this up. I was going to add that maybe we can talk about the reward that you might build in, because we're kind of talking about behavioral change and replacing a habit. But if it's at the level of dependence and addiction, that's a very interesting simultaneous problem that you're trying to solve in the brain. I'm kind of curious about this. But if you are someone who the reward now becomes sugar instead, or something
Right.
else instead, we know that habit coupling is a really useful tool, as long as it's intentional and isn't maladaptive for the other things that you're trying to become healthier for. So how do you couple this in a productive way?
Yeah, the reward piece is interesting because, like with that woman, okay, now sugar is my reward or just my way to cope with a lot of stress. And when I dug in with her, so originally my program was 4 weeks long. And as I started seeing those kinds of things come up, the second round was 6 weeks long. Now my program is 8 weeks long, because it takes time to create change in the brain and rewire neural pathways. And she was one of those first groups where it was a little bit more of a steep taper. 4 weeks, and we're getting down to 2 Instagram opens a day of 10 minutes and nothing at night. It's pretty steep. So spreading it out has really helped. I know I've already said this, but a very slow taper, very incremental, because as soon as you start to get outside that window of tolerance in your nervous system, if you haven't built up coping skills, then you are going to look for maybe old ways or new ways to try and soothe your stress. So really taking it slow, 8 weeks, even 12 weeks. If someone wants to work through the program just really slow and take it little by little. And then when it comes to building in reward, it's so interesting because what I've seen is the reward becomes how much better you feel, like so many people after 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they're starting to decompress. They're really starting to rewire. I mean, at this point, it's been a month that they've been working on this. They're just sleeping better, they're feeling better, and they're much more calm and grounded. I've had people say, I haven't felt this present in my body since I was a kid. I've had people say, I haven't seen the green of the trees since I was a kid. Like, I just feel like everything's popping out at me. That really does become a reward. But when you're first starting out, just being really gentle with yourself and having a lot of compassion and not taking it too fast, just being slow with it.
Which is probably difficult sometimes to convince people to take things slowly in the world that is built around immediate gratification and everything needs to be here and now, right? But you're right, it's just not going to happen that way for most people. They need time. That's an essential component in any significant change process.
Yeah, it does. It just takes time. And I also teach meditation in my program, different types of meditation. It's like physical therapy for the brain. Focused attention meditation strengthens your focus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Loving kindness meditation strengthens your empathy center. So, it also equipping people with tools to remap their brain and strengthen their brain in ways. So doing a loving kindness meditation helps make you feel so much better, or a body scan, equipping people with these tools to regulate their nervous system. Because the goal for me isn't, again, not just that you're off your screens, but that you can feel anything and do anything. Like, your feelings no longer overwhelm you. Those big, scary, heavy emotions, you can take them head on because you know how to regulate through it, and you become a lighthouse for people around you. Well, a quick story. I had another woman in my program. She had 2 teenagers, and, they're always on their screens. They're always on their screen. She'd been harping on them. And she heard about my program. She's in my community with me, another female business owner. And she's like, I want to do this just to equip myself, because my teenagers are struggling. And she realized that she was on her screens a lot, with her business. But as she started to work the program and master the blocking app and learn about her nervous system, her teenagers came to her like week 3 or 4 and said, what are you doing differently? You're just so much more present. Like, you're so calm. We never see you on your phone anymore. They really noticed not just a difference in how much she was on her screen, but her presence and her energy. And they asked her what she was doing, and she was able to show them how to set up screens on their phones. And they asked her. She modeled the behavior, which is where I love working with adults. I haven't worked with teenagers yet. I get asked all the time to work with teenagers, but I'm about equipping the elders, equipping the parents, so that when kids admit or say, like, I don't like how much I'm on my phone, mom and dad say, let me show you the tools. Let me walk you through what I do. And they're modeling it. They're not on their phones after 9 p.m. They're reading a book. They're knitting. They're doing something. They're just present. So that is my mission there, is to equip the parents for themselves.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
Abby, how to make people stick to the new habits is what's the secret sauce that allows them to keep their new acquired skills and continue doing the right thing in the right way?
Mm-hmm. The people I've seen have the most success are people who really, really lean into the fact that it is not, again, it's not a willpower thing. It really releases so much shame. And they're like, oh, now I have the tools. I am a huge fan of a specific blocking app. It's called Screen Zen. Screen Zen. It is free. I've talked to the developer. His name's Scott. He's awesome. He wants to keep it free. Really learning how to use that as a tool. Like, I will get messages from people a year and a half after taking my program where they say it is still changing their lives because they have mastered this blocking app. They know when they need to add a new app in there that they've maybe been spending too much time on. They can tweak the settings so that, it is so customizable. It almost becomes like a second skin. Like, you just know when you need to tighten it down. For me, the holidays are a really stressful time of year because of family stuff, and I will be more inclined myself to spend more time on my phone. So I know personally around the holidays, I need to increase my lock settings timer from 2 minutes to 5 minutes because I'll be more prone to get in there and mess with it and get some dopamine hits. I'm still working the recovery process myself. But having true skills to know how to keep your highest self in the driver's seat, because you will have relapses. You will have times when you get in there and break your settings. That's part of recovery. Relapse is part of recovery, and you learn from it. And then you get back in your higher self the next morning after going on a binger and watching tons of stuff. And you reevaluate, and then you set your new goals and you change your blocking app settings, because the settings of the blocking app are just so important to not rely on the willpower. You set it up from your highest self.
So Abby, let me ask you that question, because I think it's extremely important for people who use social media because they believe or tell the story to themselves that it is essential for them to be connected to others. Mm-hmm. You said 2 minutes. Is it enough to connect and respond or do everything that you need to do in a day on social media?
So let me clarify. When I said 2 minutes, the blocking app that I recommend, Screen Zen, when you set it up, you have to turn on some essential settings. Prevent app deletion. You can't just delete the app. And then lock settings timer. So once you set up all of your settings, you can't get in to change it for a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. People, I say start at 2 minutes, because you might need to change something, really. You might be like, oh, I need to see my girls' soccer schedule. Like, I need to remove that app, whatever. But 5 minutes of a lock settings timer, meaning you stare at the app. You can't leave the app. And you can't let your screen go dark. That'll reset the 5 minutes. You have to stare at it for 5 whole minutes for it to unlock and show you your settings and let you change something. And that amount of friction in the habit loop that's so used to immediate reward, It's amazing how much that 5 minutes is enough friction that people will give up. Yeah. They will go do something else. They will go for a walk. They'll put on some music. They will do some push-ups. They'll do something because the brain's like this. I want a quicker fix than this. So that's what I mean by the 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. When it comes to how long you need to be on social media, what I've found for business owners, myself having a business, not on social media anymore with my business, but 3 10-minute opens a day. 1 in the morning, 1 in the midday, and 1 in the afternoon around dinner time. That is enough to get in and do what you have to do. Now, for our entrepreneurs or people who they need to post or they think they need to post, I say write your post in your notes app. Find the picture you want. Have it all keyed up. Right. And when you unlock, like, you are on the hunt. You are not being hunted. You are on the hunt. You are posting your picture, pasting your caption, responding to comments, getting back to people in DMs, and you just got more done in 10 minutes than you used to get done all day on social media because you used to get sucked in, and now you're not.
And you just freed up a working year almost of your time every year, right? You can start another career. You can do things that actually
move the needle in your business. Be on podcasts, connect with other people, go to a networking event. Like, all this time we spend building content and posting that doesn't actually get us anywhere. It's like, go make connections. That's how business has always worked, is people and connections, human to human. That's what moves the needle in your business. Don't fall for this, that you need to be posting so much for your business. 3 10-minute opens a day. Be ready, get in there, get out. Your heart is racing. You're like, the clock is ticking. I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And then you're locked out and you're like, okay, whoa, I got so much done. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Probably people could apply that to other blocks in their lives too. 10-minute productive blocks for whatever you're doing. I used to use that as well at work. It does make a difference how you focus and how you prioritize too.
Yeah, it does. And you can use it for email. For email, it might be a little longer to write emails and respond. So maybe it's 3 30-minute openings that you get to access your email. You can also download screens in on your laptop, which is great because, oh, you better believe I was scrolling Instagram on my laptop in bed. When I started taking it away on my phone, I'm bringing my laptop in bed and holding it on my chest and scrolling on Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, just again, in that moment, telling myself, Abby, this is not your fault. This is an addictive thing, so how do we fix this now? And then downloading screens in on my laptop, making some settings there, especially when you're starting out. At this point in my recovery, I have a lot more. I can get on something and post real quick or do something. It doesn't suck me in like it used to. But in the beginning, I needed the blocking app a lot. I really needed to depend on it. And that is completely normal.
Great. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, good that it exists and for that purpose, right? That's just a good tool, safe.
Yeah.
And oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember reading a research paper that even if that gap is 15 seconds, for most people, it's unbearable enough
Yes.
to stop using or logging into social media apps, right? That's how addictive it is, that such a short moment,
Yeah.
just to take a couple of breaths, it makes them, well, probably angry or impatient or unhappy enough
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
to walk away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your brain is very smart. Your brain is creating solutions to problems. That's what the
Yeah.
habit loop is I have a problem and I need to solve it. I'm feeling overwhelmed. That is uncomfortable. So I need to solve that. And phones just become this pacifier to all of those things and all of those problems. But when you introduce friction into that habit loop, your brain will find another solution. It will. It will find another solution. It's deep breaths, going and reading your book, doing something different. Your brain just doesn't want to sit there and wait in the discomfort.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what will also stop the feeling of overwhelm as well, right? Because there's this belief that people, oh, I will come back from work, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to sit on the couch and scroll on my phone because I'm resting. You're not resting. You're bombarding your brain with visuals, audio, and content that is designed to emotionally destabilize you all the time, voluntarily, right? That's not rest. That's a disaster.
It feels like rest. It feels like rest. Because, for me, I'd get off of a 13-hour ICU shift and go scroll on my phone, and it would feel like rest. It would feel like I disappeared from my life and my problems and the things that I was seeing. And, our brain wouldn't make this habit loop if it didn't work, if it didn't solve the problem. So it does create, it's some kind of anesthesia, but it feels restful. What's really happening is you're going into a freeze state in your nervous system. You're disassociating and numbing, and your brain is still active. Your visual cortex is active. So much is going on in your brain, but in your nervous system, you've switched into more of like that dorsal vagal state. It feels restful, but it is not, because as soon as you get off of that, like your head hurts, your eyes hurt, and you have not rested. And you're still just as overwhelmed underneath it all. You didn't really solve the problem. It's a temporary solution. Yeah.
Do you think it will continue to get worse? Or do you see social media evolving in a different way, let's say over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
That's a good question. I think there's definitely growing awareness that this is a problem with parents seeing their teenagers on it and your society at large. Like there's something in all of us that looks around and everybody at their dinner tables in the restaurants on their phones. There's something that's like, this isn't right. This isn't right. There's a growing awareness. There's great podcasts. There's great books. Anxious Generation's really popular book. So like there's an awareness growing. I think that, politics is downstream from culture. The change happens on the individual level. It happens in your own families. It happens in your parenting, and us demanding different of social media companies and pressuring our policymakers to hold them accountable. I don't know what it will look like. I have a feeling it won't get better quickly. I am hopeful that people will just start to leave. And like I've left Instagram and Facebook. A lot of the friends that I have aren't really on there. The people I have in my life who are driven, they're the 6 a.m. wake up, go to their yoga class type of people, they're not on Instagram. They don't use it anymore. They've realized it doesn't help them. So I think that it's going to come hopefully from the consumer, and then we're going to see change there.
Well, so Abby, we have an interesting tradition on this podcast now where the previous guest, who you don't know, and neither do they, who the next guest will be, will ask a question to you.
Ooh.
And then you can ask a question to our next guest without knowing who that person will be. And that way you'll have to listen to the answer in the future. But we have the question from our previous guest for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, this is fun. I like that.
So, what would be the one thing that you could do to change that would make the biggest impact for you?
That would make the biggest impact for me personally or just in the world?
It's up to you.
I would love to see smartphones outlawed for anyone under 16. Some people are not in agreement with that. Some people would say, oh, I want to be able to see where my kids are at any time, and But knowing what I know, I also have a really amazing nephew, and he's 16 and he's never owned a cell phone. His parents haven't allowed him to have one, and he has had periods where he has hated his parents, and his parents have had to bear the brunt of being hated by their kid. Everybody else, all of his other friends have cell phones. He feels left out sometimes, but he is the most engaging. Eye contact, curious. He reads like 5 books a week. He is incredible. And everything I know, I'm like, it's because you've never had social media. He's never even played a video game. He is my muse in a lot of ways. So I would love to see more kids just never have this technology in their hands until they have a driver's license and need Google Maps. Like there's no reason. Even 16 is a little young, but yeah, that would really, I think, change a lot.
Yeah, I think it's not the job of the parents to be liked.
Mm-mm.
The job of the parents is something else, is to create healthy, functioning, high-functioning adults. But we, again, have somehow got ourselves into a place in the society where a lot of parents believe that their job is to keep their children happy, stress-free, or give them everything that everyone else has for whatever the story behind that is. And that just creates, again, a damaged, anxious, unhappy, sad generation with the largest ever mental health crisis in the history of any medical records ever.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk around the anxious generation is actually the parents who can't think of not knowing where their kid is at all times and being able to contact them at all times and call them. Like the mere thought of taking the cell phone away from their kids induces anxiety in the parents. And again, back to Elliot, he came and visited us in Salt Lake City. No cell phone, has never been on a plane. And he took the bus from home. He had a piece of paper when he got here. What bus to take at what time, what station to go to get to the airport, what gate his plane is at. No cell phone. Found his way to his gate, got on the plane, made it here. We picked him up. We couldn't call him. We couldn't text him. Are you here? Where are you? We just had to, it was like living in 1980. And he found his way here.
It was normal for the majority of human history.
And you know what? He figured it out. And how much confidence do you think that gives a teenager to do something like that? To go out in the world like that with no cell phone, nothing, and find his way to Salt Lake City, first plane. Just, I can do things. I can do new things. I can do hard things. I can figure stuff out. I can ask a stranger where to go and to help me. Just amazing. Yeah. I'm like, your parents have done such a good job with all of you. There's 3 of them. Like I said, they've had periods where they've been the enemy of their kids, but that's your job, is to not be their friend, but to really parent them and prepare them to be resilient.
Exactly. Also, the anxiety goes away because they realize nothing bad really they're giving themselves evidence that nothing bad really happens if you don't immediately know or think you know something. This was a default mode. Like you two are probably don't remember that, but when I used to go on holidays with my parents, we would go for 2 weeks. There was no way to get in touch with someone. Nobody knew where you are. There were no mobile phones. There was no way to get in touch, and you would come back.
Yeah.
No one at work suffered because of that. If something terrible happened in the family, you would be updated, but it didn't disturb your rest. It was normal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my hope is that, teenagers historically, they can be rebellious, stick it to the man, and that kind of rebellious energy. My hope is that it becomes real cool to not have a cell phone, to have a notebook and a piece of paper and to say, I'll meet you there at noon, unless you'll not be able to contact me. I hope that those become the cool kids and that it starts like a movement there to really be countercultural. I think they have to not get addicted too early, though, for that to work.
It used to be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to wrap up then, what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me? I'm playing with the idea of, like right now, my course is a self-guided option sold to individuals, business to consumer. I play with the idea of creating a license agreement where schools can purchase the course and use it for a year and run cohorts, is because I do get approached by, churches and things like that and schools to come and do groups, but I don't have the capacity to do that, and to meet all of those needs and run my own business and do all the things that I'm doing. So I've thought about, you get to use it for a full year. You can run as many cohorts as you want. You can charge whatever you want per participant, but you purchase this for the year and it gives you the video lessons, the journal prompts, the homework, and the discussion guides in your groups about the podcast and what did people learn, and you have that discussion, watch 30-minute video, and then do their blocking settings for that week, which I show them how to do the taper and the video, and then they come back next week. I think that would be really amazing. So I'm kind of playing with that idea.
Great.
Brilliant idea to help and reach more people in the right way. Fantastic. So, well, I really hope you succeed. You seem to be driven. And you know exactly what you're doing. It's very refreshing to see.
Thank you.
People who are not just passionate, but also willing to do the right thing. Kind of almost going against the grain or whatever the current trends and fads are. But I believe that every single person who works with you will be a life-changing experience. If you release 5 hours of your time, awake time every day, that's literally like giving someone another life.
It is. Yeah. It's giving people their life back and their humanity back. I mean, it's numbing all the best parts of us, our creativity, our poetry. It's numbing all that makes us beautiful humans. And I would love to see, and I'm trying to do my best to help people take their lives back and regain their creativity and their potential.
So Abby, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on my website, which is nurseabbyllc.com. That has all the information about me and the Digital Detox program. You can also find me on Substack. My publication is Moss on the Rocks, where I talk about slow living, and that slowness is where beauty grows. So what does that look like? On a personal level, my husband and I have a camper van, and we do camper van adventures, all over the state of Utah. And I write about that. I write about our adventures and what it means to just live slow and with only a few things in your possession. So that's where you can find me, Moss on the Rocks.
Cool. And we've now been on this conversation across the world for a little over an hour. So I'm just wondering, what do you do after this screen time?
Well, today's is a Saturday for me. I don't usually work on Saturdays. So I was like, okay, this is a little different for me. But I went to a hot yoga class this morning and had this call. And then now I use Saturdays to do my meal planning and get all my groceries and cook my breakfast for the week. So this week I'm vegan, so it's veggie breakfast burritos. I'll get those all made and prepped and put in the freezer and make some soup so that tomorrow, which is my Sabbath Sunday, is when I can really just have a day of being and not doing anything. It's a big practice of mine.
I love the preparedness, which I believe comes from your healthcare professional training. They have everything ready in place, ready to go, because otherwise nothing's going to work. It's
and
great
it's
to see
amazing
how
when you're not on your and when you don't have you're not on your screens, you now have time to meal plan and go to the grocery store and cook and make these breakfast burritos and soup and read my book. I'm like, wow, I do have a whole other life that has opened up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us.
Yes, you're so welcome. This has been a truly wonderful conversation. Thanks for all that you guys do with your podcast and your business and for having me on. It's been wonderful.